Now, tell us a bit about your book. I love the name, so I'd love you to share with the listeners the name of your book and explain perhaps the title for them, because it's a goodie.
So the title of the book is The Fat Ginger Nerd, subtitled A Weight Loss Story. The Fat Ginger Nerd, it is, some people, they hear that and they think, oh, gee, that's kind of a bit on the nose, don't you think? Is it okay to use the word fat in this context? And for me, I am okay with it, because the expression fat ginger nerd, those three things, they're all references to myself. They were the three things that I used to get the most grief for while growing up. There's the hair color, which, people weren't too hard on. Everybody's aware that there's not much you can do about that when you're young, that sort of thing. It's just, ha, jokey. The fat, though, was a very different story. People would tell me that I was fat, and I would hear it as if they had said, you're fat and that makes you a bad person, which comes back to what we were talking about before. It's your fault that you're fat. And I think there's room for a bit of a decoupling there. I don't feel that the word itself is inherently bad, because in my case, it was objectively true. I was horrendously overweight. I was fat. But it's this idea that there's this stigma attached to it that we can remove. And as we said before, it's not necessarily that person's fault. It certainly wasn't in my case, as I now know. So as a self-reference, it was, it's a representation of how I was. I was all three of those things, a fat ginger nerd. I'm only two of them now, and give it a few more years, I'll probably be down to just the one. The nerd won't be going anywhere, but the hair will be next, I'm sure.
Oh, that's funny. And, you're very funny as a nerd. So your nerd is a reference to your IT-ness? Is that what that is?
To a point, yeah. The whole nerd side of the personality, I suppose, was almost like a byproduct of my having been fat. Because, with everybody of all ages knocking me for my appearance, for my weight, for my health, I sort of reached a point in my life while I was growing up that, people are overrated. It's so hard to make friends with people if they're just going to be knocking you down all the time. So let's just not engage with them. Let's just retreat and hide away inside. Don't go out into the playground. You're just going to get bullied. You're just going to get pointed at and laughed at. So hide away from the outside world. Explore, the inside world, whatever that means. You learn to make friends with things instead of people, books, TV, movies, music, video games. Video games was a big one for me growing up. And as I reached adulthood, the jobs I've had in my career have kind of followed on from that trajectory. It's not hard to imagine how, with that kind of background growing up, how I would end up becoming, an IT person. I did broadcasting for a while. I worked in radio for a few years as well. But again, that's another inside solitary job. You're surrounded by technology and equipment, and it's not so much, dealing with people face to face. So between that and the IT, it's not hard to see how that's come out over the years.
Absolutely. And I can see actually that there's another myth that you've just busted in there, and the myth being that kids are fat because they spend all their time on computer games. And in fact, there's more chickens and eggs going on here, because clearly already fat. And so
I was already there.
Yeah. So the video games have provided a sanctuary away from the bullying of, children are vicious. They really are. And it can be relentless.
I write in the book, there's 12 chapters in the book altogether, and the second chapter is called The Escape. And it's a chapter about the various video games that I got used to playing over those years, and how I describe them as being collectively kind of like, you use the word sanctuary, I use the expression coping mechanism. I lose myself in this virtual world. If the real world is just rejecting me as it seemed to be, then I don't want to be part of that. I will find my own world, invent my own world, explore the imagination, explore video games, the internet, whatever, so that you don't have to deal with this reality of the situation. And yeah, so I do write a little bit about that.